Welcome to Sakan Algalradan Presents How to Not Get Killed. Before we get into the main program, I want to give you a small segment that I'd like to start to do on a regular basis. It's important for us to amplify the BIPOC voices in our community and to encourage a lot more. With that in mind, it is my pleasure to present to you the first of the creators in that vein. She goes by LezbiNerdy on Twitter and on YouTube, and she's just recently joined the ranks of Wheel of Time content creators. I've watched a couple of her videos, and I have been extremely impressed, both with her voice and her presentation. So we're going to talk to her for a few minutes, and I highly recommend that you check out her Twitter and her channel. Welcome. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here. Thank you for inviting me. It's very kind.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, both as a person and as a content creator?
Okay, well, a bit about me, just me. I'm a woman in my 40s. I was doing a little bit of math recently and realized that I have been reading The Wheel of Time for more than half of my life, which is a bit scary. Picked the first book up probably when I was 21 or something like that. I am a teacher. I have was a teacher in Canada. Right now I'm currently living in South Korea, and I work with special needs kids here, and I'm a big nerd. I mean, that's my name is like LezbiNerdy. I like sci-fi and fantasy. I have a Superman ring that I wear all the time. I'm a nerd. Yeah. As far as a content creator, honestly, I don't really know what to say about that. I've been reading these books for so long, and I have so many thoughts about them and no one to talk about them with, especially here in Korea. The books, for some reason, never got translated into Korean, so I know no one here who has read them. And with the show coming out, I was just thinking about the books so much more, and just decided one day, actually probably because of the current situation in the world that we can't mention on YouTube, but because of that situation, just at home a lot more, decided to put some time in, try and see if I could make videos. And I guess I can. I'm still learning, but...
So questions 2 and 3 are pretty closely related to each other. What is your creative contribution to the Wheel of Time? What is your perspective? What is your take? How do you approach making your videos?
In preparing to start making my videos, I just have a document called Moments in Wheel of Time, and then I would sort them into categories. So like my favorite moments, if you look through my channel, it's a lot of lists. So there's like funny moments, tear-jerking moments, goosebump-inducing moments, and then character analysis. For me, The Wheel of Time, obviously we all love the story of The Wheel of Time, but for me, when I go back to it, when I pick up the books for a reread, it's because I miss the people. And so talking about the characters is my favorite part. Like, that is something that is interesting to me. But I'm still trying to find what my niche is. There's a lot of people who are making Wheel of Time content, and I see what Nablus does, and he has these amazing rubrics where he goes in and he analyzes things, and I love that. But that's not me, right? Like, I'm still trying to figure out what it is that I can add. Because right now, literally, it's been pointed out to me things like, I don't put spoiler warnings on my videos, and I need to start doing that. And that's absolutely right. But the reason I wasn't doing it is because I was making the videos for me. It's just, I want to get my thoughts out there. And, oh, right, people watch this. I need to be thinking about the people who are watching what I make as well. So, one thing I know that just very clearly sets me apart from the others is I am a woman. And every other creator that I see, I love them. I love Nablus. I love Daniel. I love Badger Reborn. Unraveling the Past. They're all fantastic. I love them all. But they're all guys. And I'm a girl coming into this. And there are things that I would say I view differently because of that. And it's a bit of an odd thing, because I don't want to say that my opinion then is like a woman's opinion, because I don't speak for all women. It's a bit of an odd thing when you're part of any marginalized group. Like, I'm a woman, I'm three things. I'm a woman of color, and I'm gay. So when you're a part of a marginalized group, what happens is your opinion, people sort of assume that your opinion speaks for your people. And that is a bit frustrating, because I do think that my being a woman gives me a different perspective on, especially in a series like Wheel of Time, where so much of it is based on gender. Like, it's that is one of the foundational aspects of the series. I think a woman's voice is kind of, I don't know, I wouldn't say important, but it adds something new to the conversation. It's just a bunch of men discussing gender imbalance in a world. Well, there should be women having that conversation as well. Yeah, as a woman of color, honestly, talking about this series, the world of Wheel of Time doesn't really have racism, right? They have cultural bias and that sort of thing, but racism doesn't really come into it. What I would add to that, I would say, is more just discussing the reaction to casting and the way people have categorized it as being some sort of SJW agenda and that sort of thing. That is frustrating, and that is something that I think, but I'm glad that I was able to add something to that conversation, because again, and Daniel and Matt fully said this, they were fully aware that they were two white guys discussing a racial issue, and they are two white guys with the best of it, but they knew what that was. They knew that that was a bit of an awkward thing, and I was glad to be able to come in and say, yeah, as a woman of color, I appreciate what you have done, but let me add this to it, which is a perspective that they couldn't have had.
I think you're right. There are many women content creators in the Wheel of Time fandom, but they're mostly, as far as I'm aware, in the podcast realm. Yeah. I don't know of any other women who are YouTubers in the Wheel of Time.
Yeah, there's a fair amount in the podcast. I don't know any. Well, I know of one, but she also has a very small channel. Her channel is called Call Me Nakomi, but her channel is also very small. And she's also, I think, a fairly new YouTuber, so you can seek her out. She's a woman of color as well, actually.
The next question is a little bit more broad and general. What are some of the things that you like and dislike about the Wheel of Time?
Sorry, I get this great. I love the series. I love when I go back to it, the feeling I get is like when you remember something great from when you were a kid, and you imagine going back and you imagine that it's going to be fantastic, right? But in reality, when you're an adult and you go back to those places as a kid, it's never as good as you remember. But the Wheel of Time always is. Every single time I go back, it's like I get to experience that same feeling of, oh, this is amazing, this is wonderful, it's magical, it's immersive. The characters, they feel like old friends. Like, I've known most of those characters in those books for longer than I've known my closest friends. And I know they're fictional, and I know that, but like, I just have. I feel like they are good friends, and I love the Wheel of Time. Was the first, the way I think of it, it was like the first grown-up book I ever read. Like it wasn't. I'd read other books before that, but it was the first book I remember reading where things like the hero would make a decision, and then the decision that the hero made would be wrong, and he would fail, and like that shocked me to my core because I'd never encountered that before. So even though there are other books that have done that I've read since, the Wheel of Time opened me up to that sort of aspect of heroes failing and people being wrong and having bad motivations with good consequences or good motivations with bad consequences. Like, that was something that the Wheel of Time gave me, an openness to being able to accept that part. Yeah. As far as things I don't like, I mean, some of it is the gender dynamics. I'm not a big fan. I understand that gender and balance is a major theme in the books. However, I do think that there were in some aspects where Robert Jordan maybe struggled to capture women. The way I've described it often is I feel like he would write a scene with women in it and then go back over it with a woman filter. Like, he would have written it and it would be fine, and he would be like, oh wait, I didn't talk about clothes. I need to talk about clothes in this scene because they're women and women talk about clothes. That's a very facetious example, but that's something that I felt like there would be added things to it that didn't feel authentic to me.
Interesting. It's an interesting way of putting it. I've never actually thought of it in that way, and I can see that.
I mean, it's, again, my perspective. I don't know. Other women find it fine, but yeah, that was my...
I'm going to read this last question because it's a bit longer. So, is there anything that you would like the fandom in general to hear? Tim Ferriss used to ask his guests on his podcast, if you could have a gigantic billboard anywhere with anything on it, metaphorically speaking, getting a message out to millions or billions of people, what would you say and why? It can be a few words or a paragraph. If helpful, it can be someone else's quote. Are there any quotes that you think of often or live your life by?
Yeah. Okay. So, would this be something I would be talking to Wheel of Time fans, or just in general? Because I have two different thoughts on this.
Give us both.
Okay. To Wheel of Time fans, just right now, honestly, what I would want to say to Wheel of Time fans is, the books are the books. And we all know that the TV show is coming, and we all know that the TV show is going to have to make changes. But the books are always going to be there. And the way I always think of it, this is such a weird thing I'm about to say, is that the books are one telling of a story that happened. And the television show is going to be another adaptation of a story that happened. They're different adaptations of the same real story, which I know is crazy because this obviously is fiction, but that's how I think of it. They're separate things, and if the TV show makes changes you don't like, it doesn't do anything to the books. The books will always be there. You don't need to feel so protective of the books. The books are not going to be harmed by the television show. And then a general thing, okay, a quote that I think of all the time, and this makes me feel so... okay, it's 3 different versions of the same quote. The first time I heard it, I told you I was a nerd. The first time I heard it was on Babylon 5. And it was Delenn. I watched it when it was on television, but only for a little while, and then I stopped. But I remember seeing this quote on television, and this was like a long time ago. I don't even think I had a VCR, so I couldn't rewind it to hear the quote again, because I loved it when I heard it. And then when Netflix came out, one of the first things I ordered from Netflix when they were still sending out DVDs to people was Babylon 5, because I wanted to find this quote again. Because it struck me so hard. And then the minute I got it, I realized, oh, it's Carl Sagan. They ripped off Carl Sagan for Babylon 5. But it's Delenn saying that the molecules that make up our body are the same molecules that make up the sun. And in that, there's sort of 2 sides of that I think of all the time. And the way I think of it actually then comes to the 3rd version of this quote. That is not a Serbian proverb, but if you look it up, it will always say a Serbian proverb. I don't know where this proverb comes from, but it says, be humble, for you are made of earth, and be noble, for you are made of stars. And it's the 2 sides of that coin that I think of all the time. And quite frankly, if I ever got a tattoo, that's what it would be. Because it's remembering that we are insignificant, we are nothing, we are dirt, we are the same molecules that make up a rock, but we are also amazing and magnificent. We are sentient beings that can live with intentionality throughout the world, and we can affect things through our actions. That is magnificent. That is the part of us that is made from the stars. And so that it's the 2 sides of the same coin. That is the quote that I live by.
I like that. It would be nice to encourage more people of color to lend their voices to the realm of creators. What would you say to other members of the Wheel of Time BIPOC community to encourage them, whether they are on the fence considering taking the leap to become a content creator, or maybe they haven't even thought about it. But what would you say to encourage them to speak up and bring their voice to the table?
Well, I would say, first of all, jump in the water is fine. People have been incredibly welcoming to me. I mean, even with this weird bobblehead thing that I've created, people have been very welcoming. So you don't need to be scared of doing it. I would also say just getting over the things, it's fun. But I would also say our voices need to be heard. I get in the books in general, like I said, race is not really an issue. So it's not like our voices need to be heard in discussing the racial impact of whatever. There is no racism in the Wheel of Time in the books. But especially with the show coming out and with the tradition of the way fantasy has been portrayed as being pretty much a white European, always seemingly, world, like medieval European world, that is what fantasy is. With the showrunners having decided to go a different way, it's going to draw in a new audience, I think. It's going to draw in more people of color into the fandom, and I would like them to feel welcome. And if they come in and they're like, oh, I'm going to look up Wheel of Time, and it's a sea of white faces, wonderful white faces. I love all of them. I don't mean to say that in a derogatory way. But if it's a sea of white faces, it just can make you feel a bit like, oh, I guess I don't belong here. But if we can make it so that, no, you can see there are white guys, there are me, a black woman, there are Asian people, there are other like indigenous people, there are men and there are women, there are gay and straight, then we can say, oh yeah, we're all welcome in this community. And that's what I would want. That's what I would want the Wheel of Time community to be.
Well said.
Okay.
So thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you.
Thank you for taking the time to listen. And now let's get on with the show. Welcome to Sakana Galradon Presents How to Not Get Killed. This season, we are going to focus solely on interpreting the sword forms from the books. Today we're going to be looking at Apple Blossoms on the Wind, another form used primarily against multiple opponents. First a little bit of a description, then a demonstration, and then some drills. Apple Blossoms on the Wind is a series of 3 quick strikes designed to push back your opponents. Without the movement, the strikes are as follows. 1, 2, 3. And that third strike is with 2 hands. So again, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. And that third strike is with 2 hands. So again, 1, 2, 3. It's done with a spin. As you can see, the difficult part of this is actually the footwork. It's the spin. The spin adds the speed as you blend the 3 strikes together. 1, 2, 3. So I will show you a drill that you can use to practice that footwork. You can do this drill backwards and forwards, up and down. You don't need a lot of space. You can even do it just in a small, confined space. You step forward, either foot. We're going to practice it with both. Step forward to the outside, spin and plant. And then step forward with the other leg. Spin and plant. That spin, which is difficult because obviously as you spin you get dizzy and you need to really plant down to prevent yourself from overspinning. Practice that back and forth. Once you find that balance, you'll be able to add that triple strike on top of that spin. And that is Apple Blossoms on the Wind. Until next time, Practice this at home and try not to get killed.